welcome back to my channel. My name is Leela and I love to read queer, trans, and feminist literature. And I am very excited for today's video because I am going to be reading Emily Austen's new book, Is This a Cry for Help? I love Emily Austen so much. I found her last year and I have now read every single one of her books. I love them all so much. Her 3 previous novels feature neurodivergent lesbian protagonists navigating life, and each one moved me to tears multiple times. And she's also published a book of poetry, Gay Girl Prayers, which I would describe as a beautiful healing spell for queers with religious trauma. I would say that Emily Austen is currently my absolute favorite author, and I am really excited for this new book. From what I gather, it is anti-fascist literary fiction about a lesbian librarian, and that is literally exactly what I personally need to read right now. I cannot wait. I also kind of harbor a fantasy of becoming a librarian, so I'm curious to read it and see how this inspires me to potentially pursue that. And I got an email from Hivemind Books, the local queer and trans bookstore, that my pre-order came in and that I can come pick it up. So I am so excited. Let's go get it right now. I got the book. I am so happy. And listen to this from the description. Darcy's life turned out better than she could have ever imagined. She is a librarian at her local branch, while her wife Joy runs a bookbinding service. Between the two of them, there is no more room on their shelves with their ample book collections, various knickknacks and baubles, and dried bouquets. Rounding out their ideal life are 2 cats and a sun-soaked house by the lake. I am there. Hello. It's the next day and I have read up until page 100 of Is This a Cry for Help? And as always with Emily Austen, this book is speaking to my soul, healing my trauma, and just making life feel profoundly worth living. I love Emily Austen's books so much. I have not cried yet this time, but I have laughed out loud 3 times. I love the protagonist Darcy's relationship with her wife Joy. They are married and have 2 cats. They live in like a beautiful home by a lake. I just love that so much. I also find just like the representation so realistic. Like Joy has anxiety and that affects Darcy. Like that is just so real to me. And I just really love reading about married lesbians in their early 30s where like their relationship is not the plot, but it is an important and meaningful part of the protagonist's life. That's just like really the kind of lesbian representation I truly crave, and I just love it so much. It turns out that this story deals a lot with compulsory heterosexuality, or comp het, in a way that is like really familiar to me, to the point of being somewhat triggering. The protagonist Darcy has an ex-boyfriend named Ben who died, and that was like the catalyst for her having somewhat of a mental breakdown, which is like where the story begins. His name was Ben and she started dating him when she was 18 and he was 28. This protagonist also has a history of eating disorders, and at one point she reflects, I wanted to be skinny for the same reasons I wanted to have a boyfriend. And that is like contrasted with how safe and comfortable and authentically in love she is with her wife in their home. And something I've really learned from my safe and beautiful lesbian relationship is that we have love at home, and you don't need to like go seeking outside of yourself for external validation, which is I think a lot of what comp het is fundamentally about. And I feel like she's sort of realizing this, and it's very well written, and I just want to say to her, like, it's not your fault, because like she is kind of, I think, coping by taking responsibility for him. And that just reminds me of the sort of mechanism of self-blame as a method to feel safe and try to be protected from feeling trauma, which I find really heartbreaking. But in reading this book, I'm able to kind of connect with that heartbreak and feel it from a place of safety, which is very healing ultimately, and is really the power of representation representation, and I am just so grateful for Emily Austen's writing, like, once again and always and forever. It feels healing for my experience, and it also really gives me hope that younger lesbians reading this might be spared some of that trauma along the way. Another thing I love about this book is that it is really a love letter to libraries, and I love the library so much. The library is truly my safe and happy place, and through this character doing research as a librarian, the text kind of teaches the reader media literacy skills like critical thinking and how to identify reliable sources, which I just love so much, and like means that like this book in and of itself is good librarianship. I love the library. I love Emily Austen. At one point there are these like reactionary conservatives who call for like police in libraries and defunding libraries, and I felt that, and to me that's like literally the opposite of what is needed. Like genuinely the one time I've had a like really negative experience at the library was in interacting with a member of the NYPD, because in Brooklyn there are police in libraries, and I completely agree with the sentiment that is expressed in this text that like if there are problematic behaviors occurring in libraries, that is the result of like a lack of resources and social services, and the library is such a beautiful and powerful social resource, and I truly believe that if 100% of the police budget was given to the public library, we would be living in a much more beautiful world. I'm on page 100, so that is about a third of the way through. I'm using this Hive Mind Green Eyes the Cat bookmark, which I feel like matches really perfectly, which of course makes me very happy. And there's how my tabs are looking. Some of the things I've tabbed are I had a mental breakdown, the fact that the protagonist has blue hair, and a reactionary conservative writing that libraries are turning into communist sex dens. Slay. I've also underlined some things that I loved, like goth teens, lavender, the beginning of spring, and I loved the imagery on this page. Underwater, lit a candle, black glitter, purple, just love. And something else that I love is I feel like Emily Austen really loves cats, and there is a fluffy orange cat who just wandered into the library, and now Darcy, the protagonist, is taking care of him, and her wife wants to adopt him, and I just find that so sweet, and I love that. It's like a gloomy rainy day, and Ellie and I had like the coziest morning just reading in bed with our cats, which was so nice. And I think we're gonna watch Heated Rivalry this afternoon. We actually started it yesterday, and I thought it was so cute and fun and exciting, so I will check back in with you later. Hello, it is the next day. I am so addicted to this book. I cannot stop reading. I have read up until page 217, so I am in the final third of the story. There's how my tabs are looking. Last night I was so excited to be reading this book that I was struggling to breathe and experiencing like pain from tightness, and Alessandra was like, maybe try some yoga with Adrian, and I was like, you are so right, just as soon as I read one more chapter. I love this book so much. Some things that I loved in this section that I just read are their bookshelves. The room is surrounded by bookshelves. Joy and I have amassed a large home library. I studied English literature before getting my master's in library science. Joy was a women's studies major, so our shelves are full of feminist theory, classics, and literary criticism. Joy also collects a large number of old picture books and fairy tales. We both like to read queer fiction, poetry, and memoirs. I love that. And then she continues to describe their home. Joy collects art from thrift stores. Our cats have beds in every room. There's two in this room in front of the fireplace. Lou and Toulouse, the cats, are sleeping in them now. Joy likes to dry flowers by hanging them upside down with twine from the windows, and she collects rocks and crystals. Like, I just love that so much. I also loved the description of their wedding and their wedding vows that they made to each other over pizza and ice cream. Just so sweet. Also, Darcy takes on a home library reorganization project, which results in overwhelm and chaotic piles of books all over the house, which is literally the story of my life. Like, I just found that so relatable. There's also this like spider symbol that I thought was cute. So when Darcy was a child, she loved a book about a little blue spider, and her librarian supported her and encouraged her and like ordered more little blue spider books to her local branch, whereas her mom had like tried to dissuade her from reading that because she felt that it went against like appropriate gender roles. And it was that librarian who inspired Darcy to become a librarian herself, which is so sweet. And then earlier in the story, recalling her pet relationship with Ben, Darcy faked being afraid of a spider, and Ben came and killed the spider for her. Horrible. And then later in her right relationship with Joy, Darcy herself is like carrying a spider out to the dock to be free, and Joy is like helping her, and I just thought that was so sweet. sweet. I also love that Emily Austen uses she, her pronouns to refer to the spiders rather than it, its. Shout out to Robin Wall Kimmerer, who writes about using personal rather than object pronouns for plants and animals. Love that. I also love that Darcy had a meaningful lesbian experience in Montreal when she was younger, and she and the woman that she hooked up with went by Leonard Cohen's old house, and that woman had pink bedding. Just love that whole image. And then later, when Darcy's having a really hard day at the library, she wants to go home and lie under the lavender comforter on her bed with her cats, which literally same. That's how I always feel, and I literally have a lavender comforter and want nothing but to snuggle my cats. Also, there was a minor detail that Darcy once hooked up with a woman named Enid she met on a dating app, which could be a reference to Enid from Interesting Facts About Space, who is a lesbian who regularly has casual hookups with women that she meets on dating apps. That was such a fun connection and little Emily Austen extended universe moment. Loved that. At one point, reflecting on her like compet life with Ben, Darcy remembers feeling strangely like a horror book shelved as poetry and imagines driving off a cliff, which is just such a mood. She describes that the children's section in her library has a mural of a castle with a dragon and a unicorn surrounded by forests, and I just love that. I love the library vibe. And then at one point, in responding to a request for information about abortion, this text actually provides information about abortion access and process, and I just love that this book, in these times of rising censorship, is providing potentially life-saving information and education about accessing resources. Like, once again, this book is good librarianship. I love librarians. I love Emily Austen. Something else that I appreciated is that Darcy has a strained relationship with her mom, and I find her emotions and reflections about that very relatable. And at this point in the story, we're also gaining insight into the context of her mother's life and how that informs their dynamic, and I just appreciate all of it. I love this book so much. I cannot wait to keep reading. I am obsessed and in love. We did also finish Heated Rivalry yesterday, and I loved it so much. Oh my god. It was so like sweet and awkward and heartwarming, and I just loved it so much. And also, in Is This a Cry for Help, Darcy and Joy live in a beautiful home on a lake, presumably in Ontario, where Emily Austen is writing from, as she includes in her bio, in the territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. And in Heated Rivalry, they have a beautiful cottage on the lake in Ontario. So of course, my girlfriend and I are like, we want a house on a lake, but then we were remembering that Leanne Beta-Samosake Simpson wrote in As We Have Always Done that white cottagers in Ontario are occupying Anishinaabe territory. So then we were like wondering, is there a way that we can live on a lake in a way that is in harmony with Indigenous liberation and land back? Which made me feel that it is time for me to read Theory of Water by Leanne Beta-Samosake Simpson, Anishinaabe Maps to the Times Ahead Need. We actually went to the launch of this at Hive Mind, which was so special, and we got to meet Leanne Beta-Samosake Simpson and have her sign our books, and it was just like honestly so meaningful. So this feels like a sacred text to me, and I did read the first chapter this morning, and the words are really flying on the page. I feel like the way that she's describing the liberation of skiing on ice, I feel that in the language, so I am really excited to read this as well. Okay, talk to you soon. Finished the book. There are all my tabs. I loved it so much, and I'm really sad it's over. I feel so moved, healed, and opened, particularly about like compet and traumatic past relationships. I found the letter that she writes to Ben really cathartic, and I love the way that her like processing of this past traumatic relationship is juxtaposed with her beautiful, loving lesbian marriage that like really brings a tear to my eye. Oh my god, and a kitty fluff. I have Kitty in my lap right now, my girlfriend's cat. I love this scene of their morning on page 222, 223. Darcy says, I wake up before her in the morning. Both cats are lying on her chest. I climb out of bed quietly and amble down the stairs. I put on a pot of coffee and take 2 mugs out of the cupboard. While the coffee maker percolates, I open all the curtains and windows on the main floor. I look outside at the lake. There are loons on the water. It is 6 a.m. and the sky is orange. I return to the kitchen and spoon brown sugar into Joy's mug and take the cream out of the fridge. I hear the stairs creak while I pour coffee into our cups. When Joy reaches the kitchen, she takes her cup from me with both hands and smiles. We walk barefoot outside together down the stone path that leads to the lake. We sit on our dock and sip our coffee in silence. I just love that so much. And then on page 236, Joy brings Darcy pancake breakfast in bed for her birthday. I love that. And Darcy says, I puncture a berry with my fork. Purple juice saturates the surrounding pancake like a bruise. Reblog. And then they go to a coffee shop and a bookstore for her birthday, which just sounds like my perfect day as well. I love that. I also really felt this juxtaposition of on page 236 when she's like reflecting on this beautiful moment. She says, how lucky I am to be alive, healthy, in a safe place where I live with someone I love and who loves me. I really feel that. And then on the next page, she says, I wish I could exist in this moment without carrying the baggage I've collected throughout my life. And I really feel that as well. And so it feels healing to see that represented. Also, Darcy's wife, Joy, is a bookbinder, and there's this beautiful symbol that I really loved. They met at a library conference, and Joy had this old edition of The Velveteen Rabbit that she'd found at a secondhand bookstore and beautifully restored. And Darcy meets her and says, that was my favorite book as a child. And Joy says, me too. And they connect. And then on their first anniversary, Joy gives that restored Velveteen Rabbit to Darcy as a present. And I just find that really beautiful. And then at the very end, after Darcy's letter to Ben, there's an image of pink wisteria blooming at the beautiful home that she shares with Joy. And I just love that so much. I also love Rhonda, the archetypical librarian. On page 225, it says that she is wearing orthopedic Mary Janes, a long dark skirt, and a gray knit cardigan. Truly my fashion icon. I love her. I also love Mordecai, the adorably neurodivergent trans librarian. And then I love that at the back of the book, there's this list of ways that you can support your public library. Let's play Put a Finger Down. Ways you can support your public library. Get a library card. I have like 4. Borrow books and check out material. Do that all the time. Visit a branch in person. Do that almost every day. Participate in library programs and events. Yes, I do that. Love that. Love author events especially. Encourage your friends and family to use the library. Yes, my friends and family watching this, I highly encourage you to use the library. Vote for politicians who support funding libraries. I canvassed for Zoran and he did a speech in front of the Brooklyn Central Library talking about the importance of public libraries, so I feel like I'm pretty aligned with that. Attend city council and library board meetings. Haven't done that. Write your elected officials expressing your support for libraries. Ooh, I could do that. And ask the staff at your local library how else you can support them. That is so nice. I also love that while this book is in many ways a love letter to public libraries, it's also really honest about the challenging realities of being a public librarian. So like reflecting on my fantasy of becoming a librarian, I feel like this book actually really did give me information about what is so beautiful and meaningful about it, and also what can be really hard about it. Having finished this book, I feel inspired to reread Pride and Prejudice to reflect on the meaning of this protagonist's name being Darcy and how that relates to the story of Pride and Prejudice, where the love interest is Mr. Darcy. Pride and Prejudice is also directly referenced in Is This a Cry for Help? And I love how these two editions happen to match each other perfectly. That is so satisfying to me. I actually also feel inspired to reread The Bell Jar after finishing this, because in Is This a Cry for Help, there are some beautiful reflections on the fig tree scene in The Bell Jar. On page 264-265, Joy's mother reflects about the fig tree scene, you know, where Esther is sitting in the crotch of a fig tree trying to decide which fig to pick. Be a wife, travel the world, be a mother, be a poet. She can't pick them all and they start falling. I felt really affected by that. I really feel that actually. Lately I've been reflecting about how it can be difficult to commit to things because of the opportunity cost, like how picking a fig means losing other potential opportunities, but the alternative is staying stuck while the figs around you keep falling. And the reflections on authenticity in this book really inspire me to live as my truest self and choose my most beautiful life, and I really am grateful for that. On page 266, Darcy pulls a poetry book off the shelf and finds a poem that really resonates with her perfectly in that moment. She says, I feel a sort of cosmic magic finding me in this poem. And I definitely feel cosmic magic finding me in this book. Finally, I feel really moved by the conclusion about the bird facts emails that really brought me close to tears. I also really connect with this symbol that's woven through about how pigeons are actually doves. I have always loved pigeons for being city doves, and I also found it synchronous because I'm running a 5K on Saturday called the Frozen Pigeon, so I just thought that was a fun little synchronicity. And I started running last year like for my mental health, and I found it to be really like life affirming, and I love for myself like reading sad girl literature and running for my mental health. That just feels like a really beautiful beautiful balance. Thank you so much, Emily Austen, for writing The Book of My Soul and another one of my favorite books of all time. I am so grateful for Emily Austen's books, and thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.